Her voice sounded like it wasn't a life collapsing outside the window, but just a bit of rain starting to fall. Calmly, almost cheerfully, she announced that she was done pretending and that she had a new man now. He'd be coming over, might even spend the night sometimes. And then, like nothing had happened, she poured herself a glass of wine, waiting for the yelling, the breakdown, any sign that she'd broken him. But instead, silence. A silence with something unsettling just beneath it. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He simply took a sip of his coffee, as if they were discussing the weather. Nothing more. She thought she'd won. But she didn't realize the game was already over. She wasn't the mistress, the victor, or the one in control. She was a pawn in a meticulously crafted plan. Every move she made, every lie, every smug look, every illusion of impunity had been predicted and allowed. She believed she was tearing him apart, but he had been dismantling her for a long time. Now he was reclaiming everything she tried to steal. The money, the reputation, the freedom, the peace. No yelling, no blood, just cold precision, calculated to the last detail. And when the sirens blare, and all she can do is stand there with hollow eyes among the ruins of her former life, it'll be far too late to ask, why? Because the answer was already on its way. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So let's get started. I stirred my coffee slowly, the spoon tracing lazy circles as the kitchen clock ticked softly in the background. Across the table, Nina, my wife of nearly 10 years, tilted her wine glass, watching the deep red liquid swirl like it held answers. That smug smirk she wore, it had practically become her new default. She thought I hadn't caught on, but I had. She leaned back in her chair with the air of someone who believed she'd already solved the mystery sitting across from her. And then, as casually as someone commenting on the weather, she dropped the bomb. "I'm done faking it, Damien," she said with an unsettling cheerfulness. "I've been seeing someone. His name's Jasper. He'll be staying over sometimes." I gently set my cup down. No raised voice, no theatrics. Nina stared, waiting. She expected something loud, maybe a meltdown, desperate pleading, a shattered mug. But I simply took another sip. "That's it?" she asked, frustration creeping into her tone. I dabbed the corners of my mouth with a napkin and gave a short nod. "Appreciate the heads up." Her smile faltered, just a fraction. That calm wasn't in her playbook. "You're seriously fine with this?" she pressed. I stood, picked up my plate, and carried it to the sink. "You've made your choice, Nina. Why would I stop you now?" I could feel her glare burning into my back as I rinsed the dish, but I didn't bother to turn. There was no point. Truth was, I'd known about Jasper for a long time. She believed she was a grandmaster in some relationship chess match. What she didn't realize was the board had been mine from the beginning. I set the stage, moved the pieces, and wound the clock. I dried my hands, grabbed my keys, and gave a final glance over my shoulder. "Enjoy your evening." She didn't answer. That was the last moment she thought she had the upper hand. When Nina made her so-called revelation, she thought it would break me. In truth, the collapse had already happened. She just hadn't noticed the wreckage at her feet. The first time I sensed something was wrong, I didn't confront her. I watched. It began with subtle shifts. Her phone, once casually left around, now never left her hand. Nights at the office that stretched suspiciously long. A sudden obsession with spin classes she used to mock. I didn't argue. I tracked, I recorded, and I learned. By the time her lies could have filled our mortgage paperwork twice over, I was already into phase 2. I installed a second security system, the kind she didn't even know existed. Cameras so discreet, she passed them daily without a second thought. Then I found him. Jasper Thorne, age 36, former real estate agent, until fraud charges derailed that career path. Now he floated between questionable schemes, barely staying afloat. Landon helped. We hadn't spoken much in recent years, but there was a past. He was in cybersecurity now, and still owed me for a mess I cleaned up for him in college. Within 48 hours, he handed me everything: Jasper's financial statements, sealed court records, workplace complaints he thought were long buried. Nina believed she'd traded up. In reality, she'd shackled herself to a sinking vessel. I didn't spiral. I didn't drink or rage. I calculated. Quietly, I began draining small sums from our joint accounts, carefully spaced, easily overlooked. I compiled her texts, her hotel bookings, the receipts from dinners she claimed were with clients. While she thought she was sneaking behind my back, I already held the steering wheel. By the time she so smugly announced Jasper would be spending nights, she was already deep inside a trap she couldn't recognize. All that remained was execution, and if nothing else, I could wait. 2 nights later, I triggered the plan. I told her I had to leave town for a late business meeting. She barely acknowledged me, too engrossed in her phone, a sly little smile curling on her lips. Perfect. I packed a small overnight bag, dropped it in my trunk, and checked into a cheap motel just a few miles away. There, I accessed the live feeds. Every room, every hallway, clear as daylight. At exactly 9:13 p.m., Jasper's beat-up car pulled into the driveway. I leaned back in the creaky motel chair as he stepped out, holding a bottle of budget wine like he owned the place. Nina met him at the door, glowing like she hadn't in years. She kissed him like they were high school sweethearts. It was laughable. They moved inside, relaxed and giggling. She poured wine. They sank into the couch, completely at ease. I waited. Timing mattered. I needed them relaxed, vulnerable, caught entirely off guard. At 10:05 p.m., I made the call. Landon had a friend, an old contact in private security with ties to local law enforcement. I used an anonymous line. Jasper Thorne, currently at this address, violating probation, prior fraud offenses. Landon's guy ensured it got fast-tracked. By 10:27 p.m., flashing lights flooded the street. Nina leapt to her feet, wine spilling everywhere. Jasper struggled with his sneakers, barely managing to slide them on before the front door exploded inward with a thunderous bang. "Jasper Thorne! Freeze! Hands where we can see them!" a commanding voice thundered. He stood paralyzed, eyes wide, stunned like an animal trapped in high beams. Nina shrieked as 2 officers stormed in and tackled Jasper to the floor. I shut my laptop with care, slid the motel room key into my pocket, and stepped into the chilled night air. A few minutes later, I turned the corner onto our street, just in time to see Jasper being led out in cuffs. Nina spotted me through the flashing lights and confusion, her expression twisted, rage clashing with dread. "You!" she screamed, voice cutting through the commotion. "This is your doing!" I parked with deliberate calm, stepped out, adjusted my jacket, and offered a relaxed smile. "Good evening, Nina." Jasper was shoved into the back of a cruiser, still shouting, his pleas falling on deaf ears. I lingered by the sidewalk, hands in my coat pockets as Nina stormed toward me, her face burning with fury. "You set him up!" she seethed. "You've lost your mind!" I raised an eyebrow, shrugged coolly. "No, Nina. I'm just better at the game than you are." One of the officers walked past us, holding up a sealed evidence bag. Inside, a switchblade, Jasper's, taken straight from his jacket. The color drained from Nina's face. "You have no idea what you've done," she choked out. "He might go to prison." I stepped in close, speaking low enough that only she could hear. "He will go to prison. And you? This is just the beginning." For the first time since she'd thrown open that front door, she said nothing. Her eyes darted around, the flashing lights, nosy neighbors peeking through curtains, officers pulling more from Jasper's car. The life she thought she'd upgraded into was crumbling around her. "You're tearing everything apart," she whispered. I gave her a cold, precise smile. "No, Nina, you broke it. I'm just making sure there's a paper trail." She backed up instinctively, unsure where to go. Jasper was in custody. Cops were watching her closely, and I stood between her and the street. For the first time in a long while, I saw it. Real, bone-deep fear in her eyes. "You think this makes you better than me?" she snapped, trying to salvage the last scraps of pride. I tilted my head. "No, just more clever, and far more patient." An officer gave her a nod, motioning her to move aside as they wrapped up their work. She cast one last glance at me, lips pressed tight around the words she couldn't speak. Then she turned, backing away in silence. Once the supposed ruler of this house, now just another rattled spectator. When the final patrol car rolled away, the silence left behind was crushing. Nina slumped onto the couch, clutching her phone like it could save her. I stood near the window, watching the street now return to quiet. "You feel proud of yourself?" she rasped, her voice stripped raw. I turned slowly. "Not exactly." She shot up from the couch. "You think you can just wreck lives because yours didn't go the way you wanted?" I laughed, low and without humor. "Nina, you blew up your own life. I'm just speeding up the fallout." She jabbed her phone toward me. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll sue for half. You act like you're untouchable, but you're not." I walked calmly to the side table, picked up an envelope and dropped it in front of her. She hesitated, then tore it open. Her eyes scanned the papers, then stopped cold. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "Prenup," I said flatly. "You signed it. Remember? Right before the ceremony?" "My attorney already filed the divorce paperwork." She flipped through the documents, her fingers frantic. This can't be real." "It is," I replied coolly. "Solid. Every cent you tried to siphon off, protected. Every asset you slipped under Jasper's name, traced, documented, and reclaimed." She fumbled to open her banking app. I watched her face drain of color when she saw the number. 0. "You bled me dry," she croaked. "No," I said evenly. "I defended what was mine." She sank deeper into the couch, her strength abandoning her. "You think this ends here?" she muttered, still grasping for some last-ditch threat. I smiled gently. "Oh, Nina." This was just the financial chapter. Her head jerked up. "Your reputation's next, and trust me, that's going to cut deeper." I left her there, surrounded by the hollow shell of a house that soon wouldn't be hers. And I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. By dawn, Nina was living in a new kind of hell. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, scrolling the latest headlines. She stormed around the living room in a frenzy, yelling into her phone with rising panic. "What do you mean I'm suspended?" she screamed. You can't do this." I took a slow drink from my mug, calm as ever. The posts had dropped exactly when they were meant to, 6 a.m. sharp. A digital expose of deception, covert photos of Nina and Jasper wrapped around each other, texts laced with flirtation and contempt for me, receipts from their secret weekend rendezvous. All released from faceless accounts, and all miraculously delivered to the inboxes that mattered: her colleagues, her parents, her closest friends. The flawless facade Nina had spent years crafting, elegant, loyal, untouchable, disintegrated within minutes. Her phone didn't stop lighting up. Calls, messages. A few she answered, most she didn't. But it hardly mattered now. The damage was absolute. By midday, her sister had cut her off. Her parents? Radio silence. Even her lifelong best friend sent one last message: "Don't reach out again." Nina just stood there, frozen in the living room, clutching her phone like she could somehow rewind everything if she stared hard enough. Then she turned to me, eyes wide with disbelief. "You orchestrated this." It wasn't a question. I tilted my head, expression unreadable. "Actions have consequences." "You've just never dealt with yours before," she snapped, her voice cracking. Tears were building now. But I felt nothing. No guilt, no pity. This wasn't cruelty. This was correction. "You destroyed my life," she whispered, barely audible. I stood up, slipped my phone into my pocket, and met her gaze without flinching. "No," I said. "You did that when you brought Jasper into our bed. I simply made sure the world saw what you really are." She dropped onto the couch like her legs gave out. The phone slipped from her fingers and buzzed again. Her boss. First came the unpaid leave, then termination. I didn't need to hear the words to know what was said. When she hung up, the silence that followed confirmed it. Her job was gone, and Nina, she was truly, devastatingly alone. That night, a soft knock echoed on my bedroom door. Her voice followed, faint and raw. "Damien, can we talk?" I opened the door slowly. Nina stood there, barely recognizable. Her hair matted, her skin pale, eyes puffy and red. She clung to the door frame like it might keep her from collapsing. "I've got nowhere else," she said in a broken voice. I leaned on the frame, arms crossed. "You chose Jasper. Did you forget?" Her lips trembled. "He won't answer me. He's gone. Everyone's gone." I let the silence settle between us. "I made a mistake," she cried, voice trembling. "I was so stupid. I actually believed he loved me." My expression didn't change. "And you assumed I'd be here, waiting. What? Grateful you finally figured it out?" She shook her head, desperate now. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm sorry. Truly." I held her eyes for a long moment, just long enough for hope to flicker in hers. Then I said, quiet but resolute, "That's not my burden." I began to close the door. She lurched forward, grabbing the edge with shaking hands. "Damien, don't! Please, don't leave me like this." One by one, I uncurled her fingers from the door. "No, Nina, you did this. You just never thought you'd have to deal with the fallout." She crumpled to the floor outside the door, sobbing, but I didn't stay to watch. I shut the door softly, locked it, returned to my bed, and lay down. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept, deeply, peacefully. She had made her choices. Now she could live with them, alone. A week later, the house was mine again. She vanished sometime in the afternoon, took what little she had left, and disappeared. No message, no note, nothing. That evening, I stood in the living room as golden sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor. The quiet was perfect. No false smiles, no buried secrets, just calm. The divorce had already gone through, quick, clean, uncontested. The prenup was ironclad. She walked away with nothing. No house, no alimony, not even the car. I saw to it. Then word got out. Jasper had been denied bail. Turns out his past was even worse than what Landon initially dug up. Fraud, cons, and an active assault charge pending trial. Nina tried reaching out to old contacts, but nobody wanted the association. She bounced from couch to couch until even those doors closed. She tried reaching me once or twice, one missed call, a pleading email. I ignored them both. She became what she always feared, an afterthought, a warning. I put my phone down and leaned back in my chair, walking out onto the porch with coffee in hand. The morning air was crisp and still. Neighbors passed by with smiles and nods. Ordinary, peaceful. My thoughts wandered back to that dinner, the one where she sat across from me, eyes glittering, certain she held the upper hand. She expected me to break, to chase, to beg. But instead, I smiled, and I walked away. That's when it all started to unravel. People think betrayal is one sharp moment, a clean cut, but they're wrong. It spreads slow, like infection. By the time it shows, it's already terminal. Nina never understood that. I took another sip of coffee and watched the sun rise. No bitterness, no anger, just freedom. The kind of peace you don't stumble into, the kind you claim. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you